Do we got it? Are we good to go? I think we got it. Take two. Can somebody confirm? Do we hear me? I've got no confirmation yet. No confirmation in the chat. Boy, I hope that worked. Okay, Rod, thank you. We've got confirmation. We're back. We're backing at it. That was so weird. So they got this new feature where instead of me like loading up the intro every day and playing the intro, you can load it up here and it will play it automatically. So you click play it automatically, and I clicked and it worked, and I was so excited. I'm thinking this is awesome. A step saved. It plays it automatically, and as soon as it came up, it said your mic is muted while we play the intro, and I'm like, okay. So it comes on, and apparently it muted me. I go to the settings, and the settings said it wasn't muted. So we started again. We're not going to use that feature again. The ironic thing was I was in the process of talking about how nice it's been going live and that I think we're going to stick with the live format every morning. And of course, as soon as I do, an immediate issue. So I hope we can get back some of the folks who were in here previously. My mom, I saw my mom was in here. I'm sure she'll never find us again on the news stream. You know, she was probably all excited that she found me live because we've talked about it several times, but she has a hard time finding it. Anyway, we're going live every morning at 9:30. I'm having a ton of fun, and I know I did jinx myself. I did definitely jinx myself. But we're going to have a lot of fun every morning going live at 9:30. I love it. We got a lot of college football to talk about. Tomorrow, going to be a Juck and Chris live, and I think I'm just getting a text here from Ron from the Best Damn Media, and I think we're going to do a crossover tomorrow morning as well with him. Not sure exactly that's gonna entail, but we're gonna have looks like a big show tomorrow coming for you guys with me and the Best Damn guys, and maybe Pat as well, maybe Chris, maybe all of us, but we'll see what's up. But today we're starting with Eli Drinkowitz. As Eli Drinkowitz is a hilarious coach, man. This guy's sense of humor, it makes me root for him, to be honest, despite the fact that Missouri came away with a win against our Buckeyes in the Cotton Bowl. And I say came away with a victory because they didn't earn a victory. It was gifted to them by a late season quarterback transfer, then a quarterback injury, combined with the most inexplicable offensive line decision I've ever seen at Ohio State. But we're not going to get into that. Drink had some funny moments heading into that game, including an interview with ESPN where he pretended to take a phone call from Connor Stallions as he was getting some of the Buckeyes signals before the game. And later on that week, he had a press conference with Ryan Day sitting right there with him, where he spoke about himself giving up play calls and how it was selfless of him to do so, and all the newfound things that he has found to be a better coach without the burden of having to call plays. And Ryan Day's face during that press conference, I'm sure some of you guys remember it. It was hysterical. But this week, his Tigers take on Texas A&M, and we'll go over that game tomorrow, along with the rest of the slate like we do every Friday. And unfortunately, that is probably the biggest game of the week. Yeah, it's a bad slate, man. It's a bad slate, but it does look ripe for some chaos, to be honest. You know, we hear that every time there's a bad slate, like, oh, these are the ones where you're going to see a bunch of upsets. And usually that's not the case. I think we're going to catch a couple this week. I do. I really do. I'm hoping so anyway. But Missouri, the underdog in the game, despite being a top 10 team, and similar to what we saw with Notre Dame early on, was ranked, went into Texas A&M, and they were an underdog. Texas A&M's quarterback, Connor Wegman, who some of you will remember, there was that really funny segment that we played earlier on when they were on game day, and that magician that they show on game day goes in when the guys are having their meetings, and he put the card in Connor Wegman's shoe. It was just a really funny scene. Anyway, Wegman, he's been injured for a while. He might be playing, he might not be, but his backup, Marcel Reed, came in and started at Florida, played a really good game, kind of got himself a national name. And Wednesday, it was revealed that Marcel Reed has a sister named Bria, and that sister works for Missouri as a recruiting staffer. And as such, Eli Drinkowitz has banned her from the facility and attending practice all week. He said this is a conflict. We want to make sure there's no conflict of interest. It's created an interesting dynamic for her, but at the end of the day, that's her brother. And we know what she's doing here. She's working, but family is so important. So I don't want her to be in any type of conflict. I just saw her in the hallway, but I'm not letting her near the copy room, and she sure can't see the scouting report. This dude's hilarious, man. I mean, I'm sure he's serious, but kind of half joking. He's just a funny dude, and we need some more people like him in college football. Like he adds a certain amount of joy to it. I really enjoy the guy, and what he's done at Missouri has been pretty damn impressive, to be honest. You know, we haven't seen them honestly, even with Gary Pinkel. Gary Pinkel won with not the same amount of talent in the Big 12 as some of the big time schools, but he could win with it. We're seeing Drinkowitz put together a bit of a recruiting machine. Like they're getting really good. They're getting big time players. They beat us for a couple of players like Henry Fanuco in the class of 2025. Mika says, Adam Guthrie offers Saturday. If not, I'll revolt. Mika, I talked to someone last night, and I am 99.9% sure that offer for Guthrie is coming. That's later on in the show, so we're going to be celebrating about that one on Saturday. USC head coach Lincoln Riley, a guy I've made clear how I feel about him. Cannot stand the dude. He was talking about Bear Alexander using his red shirt, then sitting out the year to enter the transfer portal when it becomes open. Now, he wasn't the only guy at USC that did that last week. They had another guy do it too. Senior linebacker Rayshawn Davis did the same thing, but he's not a very well-known player, so it didn't really make much news. But the point is, the move is catching on. The move that we saw the dude at UNLV do, right? So Riley said about this senior linebacker, he's a senior not playing significant snaps. He came in and talked to me so I can understand both sides of the story. But as long as we have these current rules, we're going to continue to see situations like this. And he's right. Next year, we're going to see it a lot more because remember, the guy at UNLV didn't do it till what, week 3.5? Next year, everybody goes into it knowing that this is an option for them. Riley wants to see the rules change. And what he wants changed, the reason he wants to change, is to get rid of this redshirt deal where they're doing this. So currently, athletes have 5 years to compete in 4 seasons of football. What he proposed, and what a lot of people are trying to do anyway, is give them 5 years of playing eligibility. So he wants it basically to be a 5-year ticking time clock, and you can play all 5 years or you cannot. But either way, you get an extra year of eligibility. And this situation now, if you had 5 years, then you wouldn't be forced to make this decision to redshirt before 5 games if you want, or before 4 games. If you wanted to transfer, you could just play for your team the rest of that year and then transfer at the end of the year. So it kind of takes away from that particular that move, of that redshirting move, and you still get to retain that player on your roster. He would just be unhappy, but maybe get over it. And it gives him time to play out further than those 4 games to make his decision of whether or not he wants to transfer. He'll be there all year, and he can decide at the end of the year. Now, some people do not like this idea because what you're doing, if you give them an extra year of eligibility, is you reduce the number of roster spots that are available to high school players coming up. However, we've seen another rule change that totally offsets this. The rosters are moving from 85 to 105, which means instead of 4 traditional recruiting classes worth of roster spots, you now got 5. So as we currently stand, the opportunities for those high school kids have gone up a ton. And if you give a 5th year of eligibility, you go back down to where they are right now. So nobody loses coming out of high school if you go that route. How does it benefit us as John Q football fan? I look at it the way the NIL change has benefited us the most as the fan. And I feel like the NIL change has benefited us the most as the fan by seeing so many of these folks who would normally go to the NFL staying another year in college. And I always equate this to college basketball. The regular season in college basketball used to be really popular until players started going after 1 or after 2 years of college. And the reason that it dropped is because what we like to know as fans is players on other teams, players throughout the league that are there year after year. We like to identify players. And when you look around this season of college football, you look at Ohio State, like everybody around the country They know Jack Sawyer. They know JT. They know Emeka. They've known these guys for years. It's more enjoyable for us as college football fans, even if we don't acknowledge it. It just is. We're more drawn to it. It makes us sit down and watch a game between Arizona and UCLA if we know some of the players. That's just how we're wired. So, what's the drawback of 5 years? 5 years of eligibility? I'm not really seeing it. And I'm someone who really gets irritated by, I think that we've swung so far in the rules now to cater to the player over the team that some of it needs reined in. But this particular case, I'm just not seeing any drawback. If I'm missing something, somebody's going to need to let me know. I'm just not seeing any drawback. Anyway, Buckeyes opponent this week, the black and yellow of college football, Kirk Ferentz. I've heard a lot of youngsters having a hard time pronouncing his name, guys. It's Ferentz. It's Ferentz for all you youngsters. Not Ferentz, not Ferentz, Ferentz. Anyway, he had a press conference on Tuesday, guys, and I watched that press conference. Imagine that. I actually did. I watched the whole press conference. I thought maybe we could get a couple of nuggets out of there, and I did. I got a couple nuggets. But, boy, some of the questions people ask. So having a quarterback who has beaten Ohio State, a lot of these folks think might help Iowa beat Ohio State, which is just hilarious. I did also catch that Ohio Stadium, the only traditional Big Ten stadium that Kirk Ferentz has not won in as a head coach. Former Buckeye, current radio legend Jim Lachey came up in that press conference, and Kirk, oh my gosh, now I just realized, guys, I don't have my videos loaded up because, well, they were in the first stream that we lost. So we're not going to play that video, but I am going to have to pull up a couple other ones to kind of make my points here. That's how I do the show. You know, I got some points and then a video to show you. And I had some good ones today. Jeez, that stinks. Anyway, Lachey, his son, an excellent tight end from Ohio, and he's going to be playing against us for the Hawkeyes. He's really good. I think he might have a good game on Saturday, but that was a case. A lot of people get irritated with Ohio players who end up starring at other schools in the Big Ten. And this is a case where the Buckeyes we heard that Luke Lachey and Joe Royer were kind of competing for that spot at the time. And Joe Royer was just flat out better and more developed and a better prospect at the time. What I love about moving from 85 to 105 scholarships is now when you're at a spot like that, you can take both. And I think in a lot of cases, you will take both. But Kirk was describing the 2013 Ohio State Iowa game in that press conference that the Buckeyes won 34-24. He had some really awesome insight about that game. But that was the seventh game of the Buckeyes season in 2013, Urban Meyer's second year. Iowa took the opening series down the field, 12 plays, touchdown. Jake Rudock to CJ Fedorowicz. Remember that dude? He was a stud at Iowa. Second quarter, Braxton Miller to 58-yard touchdown pass. Iowa was up 17-10 at the halftime. It was a really tight game. And then in the second half, Carlos Hyde went bananas. Braxton Miller hit Devin Smith on a really long one. It was a really exciting game. After that, they hit like an 85-yard bomb, and Kirk was describing the game, which was a whole lot of fun. Unfortunately, not loaded up. Maybe I'll pull this down and edit it back in at the end. What's up, Brad? We are back. We're absolutely back. But Kirk said when you're playing Ohio State, it feels like there's 12 guys on the field at all times, which I thought was just really cool to hear. But I was thinking I'm going to do, and I should have done this week, maybe like a minute and a half recap of a game between Iowa and Ohio State, like each day this week in the show. So I think next week for the Oregon week, I'm going to do a little recap every week of one game that we played that was pretty cool. Dago says Devin Smith had some wheels. Boy, did he ever. Yeah, I think he's one of the most talented receivers that I've ever seen in college football at the long ball. Like, what a skill that guy had catching long balls. It was just amazing to watch, man. It was like he would never drop him, contort his body anyway. Always had a step on somebody. Absolute stud. Definitely was really he was really nice to my nephew Blake one time when he met him when he was a little boy. So I always really liked him. But really cool stuff. He was asked, Ryan Day talked last night as well with a couple of the guys. I think we got to hear from Caleb, Seth, Devin Brown, G. Scott talk. Jack and JT talked. Let me try to pull up that Jack and JT real quick. That was good. Oh, Seth Mcgloughlin talk. Seth gets me fired up, man. Seth, absolutely. The story of Seth.
Where you're like talking the best to your own sideline or waiting for guys for scoring touchdowns, stuff like that. Have you always played with that kind of energy?
Honestly, I haven't had this much fun playing football since I was in high school. I think that's just a testament to how much I love the guys on this team, how much I love showing up to work every day. And yeah, I haven't really had these type of antics since high school, but I'm having a blast playing football right now. It's been awesome.
Do you think that kind of stuff, like when your teammates see you enjoying it that much, that it can be a little contagious and they kind of should take it seriously?
I hope so. I'm trying to play the game with a lot of energy and try to fire people up. And effort and energy is contagious. And hopefully that inspires some other people to play harder.
Effort and energy are contagious. They definitely are. And when you look at where that guy was after the Rose Bowl, probably mentally in his college football journey, to where he is right now, having more fun than he has since high school. Definitely, I think at this point in the season, someone we would consider on the short list for the Remington Award for the best center in America. He's smart. He's a leader. He's wild out there. It doesn't really fit his personality. He just seems like he's in a great space. I'm so happy that we got this guy. I wish we had him another year. Wish we could have had him at a little younger age because he's so awesome. But for me, he inspires so much more confidence in that entire offensive line. Like, I just feel so much better about that line with him in there versus looking at last year with a second year guy starting at center. Not knocking Hinsman at all. He's just a young dude. And to have this guy instead of that is just a huge difference for the offensive line as a whole. Dave says the offensive line is leveled up. I think that's an understatement. Seriously, they're playing so much better, and I can't wait for this game, which is going to be a really big test, as they've got an All-American linebacker and two behemoths inside that are really tough to block. Donovan, Tegra, Austin Sareveld, and Seth really going to have their work cut out with them. Ron says, I'm so glad Bama pushed Seth out. They were idiots down there. You know, when you look at it from their standpoint, and you got some people blaming Seth, I think the majority, other people recognizing that, maybe Jalen has something to do with this, right? And they got themselves a sticky situation. And it seems clear that they sided with the one that was going to give them less issues if they lost Seth, obviously, than losing the guy who's the front runner for the Heisman Trophy at this point in the season, who is playing just fantastic, man. I didn't see this coming from Milroe. I thought this was a guy who was always going to be pretty limited passing the ball. The show he put on against Georgia was just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Ryan Day was talking about Caleb Johnson because he was asked. Boy, everybody was in on asking our guys last night about Caleb Johnson, trying to bait them into some kind of bulletin board material, but they were not taking it. Caleb Johnson, the Iowa running back who's from Hamilton, Ohio, who would never have been recruited to Ohio State as a running back. He was, very lowly rated guy, not lowly rated, like 500th player in the country, just not a player that Ohio State is going after when you're only taking one or two max running backs in a class. It just doesn't happen like that. Now, moving forward, we may see a couple of guys like that every once in a while with the 85 to 105 limit. You can afford to do that every now and again because we do see so many guys from Ohio, particularly offensive linemen and running backs, who go on to excel at other Big Ten schools. We'll talk a little more about recruiting at the end of the show because we do got a bit of a big recruiting weekend coming up, I think, here as far as the offensive line goes for this Iowa game for sure. But Dave said, we love to see Ohio players go on and do good things. He said, I've been following Caleb's career. We never like to play against them for sure, but we like to see him do good. We can't sign everybody, but you're proud when guys go out of state and do so well. He's done a great job and he's a great running back. So really nice to hear that. I like that a lot. And I'm with him. I always root for guys who go on other places from Ohio State who never would have had the chance to play for Ohio State. If you had the chance and you chose somebody else, I don't root for you. But I root for guys who never got that offer for sure. Emily says everybody's in town, and that is absolutely true. Basically, all the guys that are committed to this class are in town, a whole lot of them. Brad says he's a Cincinnati guy, which makes him a Kentuckian. Brad, we had somebody in the comments yesterday take issue with me saying that Cincinnati was a bit of a split city when it comes to Ohio State allegiance versus Cincinnati UC allegiance. I don't know, man. That's what I've always heard. I'm from Northeast Ohio. I'm not very familiar with Southwest Ohio, to be quite honest. But we did find out yesterday that Tyleek is back for real this time, as in he's definitely going to be playing on the football field, not just available. So that's really fun. Devin Brown said, when in doubt, throw it to 4. Just like I was saying yesterday, like he knows who he's throwing the ball to when he fires that puppy up. And I love it, man. I love how this dude was able to come in and so quickly, just everybody knows, like, all right, man, he's just that dude. He's that good. They're talking about him as quarterbacks like they were talking about Marv. You know what I mean? And back to that question, senior Marv or freshman JJ, who would you take? It was 55-45 the last time I put the poll question up. I bet if we did it again, it would be closer to 75 for JJ after just a couple weeks later, honestly. Newly activated Caleb Downs. That was so great when Jim Knowles said we activated him. He was asked about that being activated and if he thinks he's going to keep making plays. And he definitely does, as Lord willing, if the Lord allows him to. Now, I know the Lord is going to allow Caleb to make the plays. I just want to make sure Jim Knowles allows him to as well. And we keep him activated because that was a absolute show. And that was definitely his breakout game against Michigan State. I want to see him playing more like that. Really, really cool. You know, when you think about Seth McGloughlin, Tegra, and Austin are really gaining a whole lot of not just experience, but kind of expertise playing next to that guy. And I think that some of the development we've seen from Austin can be attributed to a guy like Seth playing next to him. Oh, geez. Some bad news here is Auburn, again, has added a fantastic piece to their class. It's bad news for us specifically only because they're trying to work Naeem Offord so hard. And the better that class looks, the more enticing that is to Naeem Offord to flip, right? Well, yesterday they got Deuce Knight, Notre Dame commit. He's been committed to them for, since last September. And I thought for a little bit he was going to commit to Ole Miss. Well, it's become official. He is now committing to Auburn, and this kid is legit. Hugh Freeze in Auburn got a really good one. 6'4", 200 pounds, number 36 overall prospect, but the number 1 guy on the On3 Freaks list. This dude's a crazy athlete. He was On3's top performer at the Elite 11 finals. He was also the MVP of the OT7. That's the big 7-on-7 tournament. He's a stud. And now Auburn turns all of their attention to flipping Naeem Offord. 100% on him. It was kind of split between the two of these two. Now it's all Naeem. And when you look at a school like Auburn, who, oh, by the way, they're currently favored to get Andrew Babalola, the offensive tackle from Kansas, who Ohio State did not offer. And if they get him or Naeem, I think that they're in really good standing to potentially get the number 1 class. So look at what we've got here. Hugh Freeze, who we've talked about here on the show, I don't know, for 2 weeks in a row for something stupid or something bad, right? Constantly in the news the last couple of weeks, throwing his team under the bus, whining, pouting. Then you've got them playing horribly on the football field. And in the same time as all that's going on, he's fighting for the number 1 recruiting class at a school that doesn't historically compete for number 1 recruiting classes. This is what NIL can do for you. It's just wild to me, man. It's absolutely wild. But I really don't know how you can lure players in to play at a place that looks so in shambles to me. Like, it just looks in shambles. And I'm not somebody who hates on Auburn. I think Auburn historically is a pretty cool program. They have their ups and downs, but I like it. The fan passion is crazy. We're going to get into the ratings over last week's games. Like, there's always a ton of interest in the school, but the way the program looks right now under Freeze, it just doesn't look at all enticing if I'm a player, particularly if I'm a big time player, and they're about to cop the number 1 class. It's bananas, man. It's bananas. I'll never understand it. The CST has come out with their official proposal for the College Football Super League. You guys remember the CST is the organization with Gordon Gee and Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, that is trying to nestle their way into college football. And they've announced their official proposal for the Super League. And you're going to see this headline all over YouTube and all over articles for the next couple of weeks. And I'm telling you now that anybody given any analysis to this thing, it's a ridiculous waste of time, because this proposal requires the current people with the power in college football to give away a bunch of their power and share it with a bunch of people that have none to make it work for everybody. And that alone makes it dead on arrival, because the people that have the power don't care about sharing it with the people that have none. And they've already got their plans for how college football is going to move forward. Also, I hate Jimmy Haslam as a Browns fan, and that he's a big Tennessee booster. By the way, Tennessee's athletic director, Danny White, is in on this, which is just, it's shady that he's tied into this with billionaire Tennessee backer and Browns owner Jimmy Haslam. Like, it just doesn't smell right to me. But we're going to see a whole lot about this in the next couple of weeks, and I'm not going to talk about it because it's total nonsense. But it is fun if you want to look at the way they divvied up the conferences, who they put where. Like in the Great Lakes region, Ohio State was not in the Great Lakes region. Instead, they were in like the Mid-East region, and not in a league with Michigan. It was just like, I don't know who's doing this, but they're morons. Boy, I had a funny video here. Joel Klatt having a sad time, man. Joel Klatt was absolutely, as you guys know, formerly a pretty objective journalist, guy that called games, not a journalist, but a color announcer for college football games. And then he kind of turned himself into more of a college football personality, right? Somebody who's got to have takes and does the podcast and goes in one direction hard or goes in the other way from the public to try to elicit reaction. It's kind of sucked watching it, because I thought he was a great color man and I love watching it. Well, one of the things he grasped onto last year was to really go all in on defending Michigan over the scandal. It was something he dug his heels in on, and upon them winning the national championship, he went there and they did the spring game. And after that, he put out a video talking about how things were just going to keep on rolling. Basically the same thing that their fans told us all offseason, which totally defies logic or anything we've ever known college football to be. When you lose your head coach who built everything and the whole staff goes with him, and you have the 97th ranked returning production in the country, it's impossible for things to keep on rolling. Impossible. Well, Joel Klatt admitting that now that things aren't going so hot at Michigan, and he's having a hard time figuring out, and he's come down to identity. They're having a hard time recognizing what their identity is. And I think that their identity is the most clear and concise identity of any college football team that there is. They run the ball. That they went with a quarterback who can't pass the ball. They can only have one identity. They're a hard-nosed, run-the-ball team that tries to play tough defense. And they will head up to Washington this Saturday night and try to do this. And a lot of people picking Washington. I haven't made my mind up yet. I don't know what you guys are thinking. There is part of me that just has my buddy Chad. This is my buddy Chad here from the Best Damn Pod. I have never known anybody that dislikes Joel Klatt as much as Chad. Chad and I text often, and Chad brings up Klatt every Saturday multiple times. He's got a real axe to grind with the Klatt man. But Last week we had the ratings come out from all the games, and it always interests me what I think is going to get, the biggest numbers, and generally not the obvious games, but when we go down the list a little bit versus what I'm interested in versus what sometimes the general public seems to be interested in. And we saw this, I think, a lot with Colorado last year. But obviously, the biggest game of the week was Georgia Bama by a mile. It actually got 14 million viewers at the peak in ESPN's stream. It was the biggest streamed event they've ever had, or streamed game they've ever had in college football. Of course, it was. It was a huge game. It was an awesome sight, and the videos that came out of there were just awesome. I mean, it looked really, really cool. But the second ranked game is what kind of confused me. Oklahoma at Auburn. This game and these two teams, they just don't do it for me. That wasn't a game I was particularly excited about. I mean, they got a freshman making his first start. That's somewhat interesting, but we had just saw Oklahoma get destroyed by Tennessee, and Auburn has just been terrible this year. So that surprised me that took the number 2 slot. Colorado UCF was the number 3 slot. And if this was last year, there's no chance this one wouldn't be number 2, like 100%. And I'm wondering if some of the story of that has kind of died off for the folks who weren't really college football fans that were in on that story, because the team actually looks so much better than last year. That defense is looking like a real defense. The offensive line is not terrible. And, it just looks a little bit better, but the views aren't coming as much as they were. Number 4, Kentucky Ole Miss. I was in on this one the whole time. 3.98 million. This one really interested me. Kentucky obviously nearly upset Georgia, and now they upset Ole Miss, but they also got destroyed by South Carolina. Whole lot of odd stuff going on there, but what you can kind of deduce, I think, when you look at the SEC, is a lot of people are going to say that teams on that level of the SEC are just beating each other up, and that's because they're so good. And I think you could say a lot of them are pretty average also, and that's why that's happening, right? Like, South Carolina has some really good parts of the team. The defensive line is amazing. A lot of parts that really suck and are very average. But what we're seeing this year with the pumping of the SEC, and we've seen it in a lot of different years, but this one in particular, when we look at the top 10, and I can't even say that I disagree on every instance, but it is so like, wow. You guys really all think that all of these teams are that much better? And you look at some of the stuff like Indiana being ranked where they are. If that was, I don't know, the 13th best team usually in the SEC, which would be, let's say, at Arkansas, and Arkansas was undefeated at 5-0, where do we think Arkansas would be ranked? Like 12th, right? So maybe even higher. It's just it's so blatantly obvious this year, I guess, is the point I'm making. And it's kind of irritating, but at this point, we don't have to care anymore. You know what I mean? As Buckeye fans, we don't have to care anymore. Like, our spot is secure at the table in the playoffs if we go 10-2 every year. So it's all good for us. I just don't like hypocrisy, and I don't like nonsense. And I feel like we're seeing quite a bit of that with the SEC. And Dave says Mark May was far worse. 100%. Like, Mark May definitely had a vendetta against Ohio State and against our fan base because we got on him so hard. I almost can't fault him for that one. We're a pretty unforgiving bunch, that's for sure. Sage says, I liked when Holtz told May God and the Buckeyes don't like you. Told May God and the Buckeyes don't like you. I don't recall that, but that's good. Yes, Mark May was the original Ohio State troll. And to be honest, he made himself quite a big name doing it. He laid out a little blueprint there. And I don't think Joel's trying to follow that blueprint, but he's certainly getting a lot of reactions and interactions and growing his brand from taking the position that he did. And he knew he would. He's a smart dude and he's good. What confuses me is the Colorado position. Like, I get that he's an alum, right? And he always, but the way he talks about them is if they're, legit playoff contender. He said that before the season started. Just kind of goofy, man. kind of goofy from someone who is considered to be, by I think the general public, one of the top guys, right? The top thought leaders in college football. I guess you could call guys like him and Josh Pate. People listen to what they say and kind of use that to shape their views. I would say a lot of people who don't follow it in the weeds like we do, like the 0.2% does. That's us. You're the 0.2%, the ones who talk about offensive linemen on a Thursday afternoon. The number 5 ranked game, that was Minnesota and Michigan. 3.59 million views. Number 6, interesting, Virginia Tech and Miami. That's a Friday night game. Now, that's 2 weeks in a row that these Friday night games have been close to the top 5 in the rankings. And this is why the Big Ten went to this. As irritated as all the member institutions are, they don't want to play on Friday night. They definitely don't want to host these games on their campuses on Friday night, but they're doing huge numbers. The number 8th ranked game was Wisconsin at USC. 3 million on a Friday night. So tough to turn that down. Number 7, by the way, Illinois, Penn State. I don't know how much of that game you guys watched. I didn't watch much of it. A very boring game. I liked that Illinois covered that spread because I thought 18 was ridiculous, but just a boring game. Not a lot from anything but the Penn State defense. And while they are fun to watch, a lot of it was the Illinois offense. It's just, they couldn't handle it. They're not there yet. But props to Brett Bielema for making them a pretty respectable team. I do like to see them having a respectable team. I've wondered for years why Illinois couldn't pop up every now and again like they used to. Remember, they used to pop up and give us a game every now and again. For a while, it's been really, really bad over there. The 10th ranked game, Oklahoma State at K-State, ranked on ranked, and it kind of shows you the interest in the Big 12, how low to be number 10, because there's so many of those games ahead of them were not a ranked on ranked game. Pretty interesting stuff. Brad says there's no way that the top SEC teams could possibly have chinks in their armor. It's that their bottom teams are beasts. And that's kind of been, how we're so used to dealing with this, right? I just think that this year in particular, a little different. Billy McBride, what's up, buddy? Urban has a video floating around. Check out what Urb had to say yesterday.
Coaching, to me, there is during a year, during a season, during a game, and during moments, you got to earn. I used to do this, stare at our coaches and go like this. You know what that means? You're earning your coaching stripes right now. You're earning them right now. And that means you have to raise up and get your guys, whatever you got to do, you got to do. And Kirby Smart, to me, and people are going to listen to us say, what is he talking about? That might be the coach of the year moment to bring that team back and get their minds right. Because you have a bunch of people right now just got obliterated, and they're not used to that. Those athletes who haven't, they got smoked in a tough environment. They come back and took the lead. The young freshman, Ryan Williams, you can't stop that. That's the Percy Harvin marking. Those are freakish of, that was not a coaching error. That was just a guy. So I'm going to say this again. I think the coaching of the year, and everybody's going to say they lost, is what Kirby Smart did in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to get that team back.
Again, it's a good point. It's a solid point. But just like I was talking about, they get a pass for everything, man. You lose, and you got a legendary coach talking about coaching job of the year, totally disregarding that you missed the first part, and that is not having your team ready and getting put in that 28-0 hole. So to me, bringing them back like that and keeping them together, all right, you offset the mistake you made in the beginning, right? I don't know, man. They always get the benefit of the doubt for everything, including their coaches. And it's just, it's obnoxious. And I'm not some SEC hater at all. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Coaching job of the year. Kirby Smart for his team coming back in that game, which they got down by $1 billion and then were able to come back after maybe Alabama changed up quite a few things as to how they were playing them. I've been pretty impressed this week with the way watching the Buckeyes. None of them have really. It seems like they're totally locked in on Iowa, with Oregon week looming. Now I don't know what Oregon's going to be ranked after this weekend, but if it's close, it might be a top 5 matchup. I was really hoping that it would be. Either way, it's going to consume us all next week. Really, from the moment Iowa ends, and it's going to be the talk of the town all week next week. And I was kind of doing some Oregon website stuff last night, and one of the sites I always pop in is their On3 site, Scoop Duck. And you guys know my buddy Max Torres, who I've had on here. He's that's the site that he works at. So does Justin Hopkins, and he's the duo that do that Oregon podcast that I've been on, and I played a couple times here for you guys. And I've received some comments that a lot of you guys don't like Justin Hopkins nearly as much as Max because he's a real Oregon homer, and Max doesn't really let that out, but Max is too. Anyway, I happened to check out his top 10, Justin Hopkins. And look, Texas, Bama, he has 1A and 1B. Number 3, he has Georgia. And then for Ohio State, he says, I'm going to be honest here. Teams 4 to 7 to me are a tier down, but they're all together. Ohio State, Tennessee, Oregon, and Miami. Ohio State in the same category as Miami. Like that to me is just, I don't know what you're watching. He says the Buckeyes aren't operating at a level that makes them unbeatable. They, like Oregon, are a top level team, but a tier behind Texas and Bama and Georgia in my mind. I don't know how Ohio State could have been much better. Through 16 quarters of football they've played now, they had quarter 1 against Akron, quarter 1 against Marshall, maybe quarter 1.5 to 2.5 against Michigan State. Maybe 5 quarters out of those 16, they weren't totally dominant, and the rest, 100% dominant. And this is a guy who's been waist deep in recruiting for 20 years. He knows what's going on. He knows who's on these teams. He absolutely knows. What I think is going on here is this is a mechanism to feel better about October 12th. Because a lot of these Oregon fans I've talked to, they're not feeling anywhere near as good as they once were about that game. They came in this conference all off season, flying high. Their team was getting pumped all around the country. They were feeling really good. They were going to win the Big Ten, probably win a national championship. And after watching their team for the first couple of weeks here, the attitude has changed around Oregon. I'm definitely not seeing the rude ones around here. The ones that are here are the good ones, the realistic ones that I talk to quite a bit that, are realistic about what they're seeing and actually admit, yeah, this is not what we thought. This is not as good as we thought. We might be feeling a little bit differently about that game, which is just honest evaluation. But to try to tear Ohio State down because you want to make yourself feel better about the game, I don't know. Maybe we should do a little rivalry podcast. Brad says, Urban is a great college football personality. I really think he is. I really enjoy listening to him talk. And I know there are so many people around the country that absolutely despise Urban. They love Saban. They despise Urban. And I get it. Urban's got a little bit of that jerk edge to it. Like, I don't know if he was never the coach of the Buckeyes and you just met that dude out in real life, you probably wouldn't find his personality very appealing. But I sure love listening to him talk football. Dave does not think the Bama defense was that great. And that's why Kirby is the top coach and the top coaching job in the country. This is one of our Duck guys. He says, I pray it's a top 5 matchup. Apologies on the Ducks end. Yeah, you guys really let us down there. Ryan Day is trying to bump up that record against top 5 teams. It's very important. That's very important because the guy catches a lot of flack for that record. Now he's not going to have the opportunity. Chrome, what's up, buddy? Shepherd Duck says, I hope it's a top 5 matchup, but I doubt the AP poll will put us up there over the SEC schools. Boy, that weekend after, so next weekend, we got a good slate of games. The following weekend, we've got 2 top 5 matchups with Georgia, Texas, and Alabama, Tennessee. And I can't remember the last time in a regular season we had 2 top 5 matchups. Like, the odds of that, I mean, basically to make that happen, you would have to rank the top 10 like one conference. The whole top 5 would have to be like in one conference to make that happen. It's amazing, though. Somehow we've got it done this year. Somehow. General Chrome says, the voice of college football Michigan channel has soured me on Mark Rogers, David. David was on Mark Rogers on Saturday. I was watching him. I watched Dave's segment on there. Anyway, we talked about the visitor list, and let me go over this. I sent it to my buddy Chad last night. The visitor list for the game this weekend at Iowa, the Buckeyes visitor list will include Tavian St. Clair, Ziggy Grady, TJ Alford back in the house. Finally, he's been visiting a lot of other folks. We get him back in Columbus for a big game. Riley Pettijohn, so the linebacker crew is going to be there. Is Eli on this list? I don't see Eli. Eli's playing a big game on Friday night. You got the Sanchez's are back. Running back Sean Alston will be in the house. He's a very highly rated running back in 2026 that we've not offered. And I'm not so sure it's going to come for him. Playing small school ball, I don't know. It's a tough call. 2026 tight end Evan Jacobson, 2026 offensive lineman Adam Guthrie, 2026 Will Conroy, Max Riley, Dorian Barney, he's a cornerback, he's an Alabama commit. Caden Gebhart, he's a safety, an Ohio safety, one of the best prospects in the state in 2026. Amani Smith, he's a safety as well. And then quarterback Brady Edmonds, who is quarterback out of California. That's the one we talked about, that his grandfather's from Cuyahoga Falls, and he's definitely got some big Buckeye love, and ultimately probably the front runner for us in that 2027 class. And then Jameer Brown coming into town. And I don't know if you guys had heard this. I just heard this yesterday. So Jameer Brown out of Huber Heights, Wayne, an absolute burner. Not a totally polished wide receiver, but he's just a freshman last year. He's a sophomore now. His freshman tape was phenomenal, and his speed is undeniable. He is now the number 1 wide receiver in the country, which means we've got a number 1 wide receiver out of the Buckeye State. And the odds look really good for us. He came up to camp. His dad and him are very comfortable with Heartline. And that's like as layup gets for Heartline to win on a big-time receiver who is out of the state of Ohio, who's kind of shy and doesn't really look like he's going to be very interested, to me, in the recruiting process. But we look at this, and this is just unbelievable, man. So here's Jameer Brown, and this is class of 2027, number 1 wide receiver, which means you could potentially go from Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 wide receiver in the country in 2024, skip a year in 25, then 2026 to Chris Henry, the number 1 wide receiver in the country, to Jameer Brown, the number 1 wide receiver in the country. That's pretty special, man. That's pretty special, but that's all contingent on Heartline, right? We don't talk about it much, but at some point there will be a next step in Brian Hartline's career. He's not going to be a wide receiver coach forever. We've been fortunate that he's stayed in that role for as long as he has. Does it look like offensive coordinator is next in his path? Or maybe straight to lower level head coach? I don't know, but there's something coming. You know what I mean? Something is going to come at some point. Obviously, he's had a ton of opportunity. He's just decided not to take it. But this weekend, we've got Max Riley, the the top-rated lineman out of the state of Ohio, along with Will Conroy from St. Ignatius. And Will feels a lot better. This is a relationship that started on a rocky path between Ohio State and Will. Even a really strange offer that was born out of an angry coach in January. It was just a really odd situation, the way this happened. But Fry's been getting more involved, recruiting him actually, and Will feels much better about it. So that's awesome. And then you got Guthrie, and you had Sam Greer in 2 weeks ago. And Guthrie, I really like. He plays with an attitude. Obviously 6'7", 300 pounds, long arms, fast feet. And like I said earlier, this is the week he gets that offer. But going from 85 to 105 scholarships, guys like this are an absolute no-brainer, right? Like Adam Guthrie not having an offer is just silly, which is what I've been saying all along. You don't need to review his tape. Are you kidding me? He's 6'7", 295, and his sophomore tape was pretty damn good. Like, yes, you have 20 more scholarships. Of course, you want a guy that Texas A&M, and Clemson are trying to come up in Ohio and get that's 6'7", 295. Yes, you want him on your roster. It's just silly. Like, it's silly to even have this conversation. But Ohio produces positions like offensive line better than most. We look around the Big Ten, and there are Big Ten teams littered with Ohio linemen. And with this 85 limit going up to 105, the absolute best strategy, I think, is to get every Ohio offensive lineman that looks like they're Buckeye caliber, which some classes can go as deep as 6 or 7. And that's not a big deal. Bring them in. They're more apt to stay and get developed and not transfer out. And every once in a while, one's going to turn out and be an absolute star. Those are the ones we see starting at other places around the Big Ten. But you don't know it when they're in high school. You just don't. Because a man from 18 to 22, bodies take drastic, way different tones. And we're all different. We all develop at a different pace. And we see so many of these guys that were nothing become, and in high school, become excellent college offensive linemen. So increase the odds. Oh my gosh, by the way, guys, the class of 2022, somebody just sent me a tweet that somebody had posted, and it was a screenshot of the guys in the class of 2022. And granted, that class was a little harder to evaluate. They were dealing with COVID through some of those guys' high school career towards the end there. And we have, it was a bad class. It was a bad class, but I did a little video just kind of going through that class, and I wanted to compare. So if you looked at that class of 2022 versus this year, how many starters it produced versus how many starters the class of 2021 produced versus on last year's team. So I just went through and did a quick little. We're going to take a look at the class of 2022 and then compare it to the class of 2021. And the reason we're going to do this is because now 2022, we would normally have more of these guys being starters that are not starters because we had some guys who stayed back. So we're going to go ahead and pretend guys like Jack and JT and Emeka, Trey, some of these guys had already left and went to the NFL, guys that we assume might have gone in a normal year. And then we're going to count up how many starters we have in the class of 2022 versus how many starters last year from the class of 2021. So we're comparing apples to apples. So if we start at the top, CJ Hicks, if Cody Simon would have gone to the NFL, would CJ have started? We'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say yes, either him or Gabe, both in this class. So we'll say one starter. Then we're going to add one and say 2 for Sonny. Tegra will count, so that's 3. Devin Brown, no. Keon Graves, out of here. Caleb Burton, out of here. Amari Aber, out of here. Caleb Brown, out of here. Kenyatta, yes, he would be starting. That's 4 starters. Gabe, we counted one of him or CJ. Kojo, no. Hero, would Hero have started if Tyleek was gone this year. I don't think so. I think it probably would have gotten beat out by Cade Mcnown. Caden Curry, yes, he would be starting. So that's 5. George Fitzpatrick, no. Carson Hinsman, no. Dallin Hayden, no. He's out of here. Bennett Christian, no. Jair Brown, out of here. Kai Stokes, Ryan Turner, Avery Henry. You got 5 starters in this class if the guys left. As it stands, you've got Sonny and Tegra. That's it. You got 2 starters in the class of 2022. 2 starters. Another thing to look at, and a huge disadvantage that Ohio State was putting themselves in, that they're not anymore, thankfully, 21-man class in 2022. You have less wiggle room, taking less guys. Let's go to 2023. 21-man class in 2023. How about 24? 22-man class in 2024. How about Alabama in 2024? 27-man class. How about Alabama in 2023? 28-man class. Alabama in 2022, just a 25-man class. How about 2021? 27-man class. More shots, more opportunities to hit. Just a really, really bad strategy. And because of it, you're missing out on probably 2 more starters on each of those classes. And 2 starters 4 years' time makes a huge difference. So there we go. The point is the class of 2022, not so hot. Also, the new strategy of maybe keeping up in numbers with some of our biggest foes on the recruiting trail finally has it's going to make things a lot better for us in the long run. I mean, it was so frustrating for so many years to be going through those numbers of classes and like, these guys take 5 more shots than we get every year. Of course, they're going to have better results. Infuriating. Mika says Jameer Brown, Teddy Ginn Jr. Rod says Wayne guys always go to OSU when offered, and they've been pretty good to the Bucks. No doubt about that. The Duck Knight, hey, maybe Kentucky is just really good. Could be, right? Brad, St. Ignatius, definitely struggling this year. They're terrible. Hoban destroyed them. Tomorrow night, big time Northeast Ohio football game. Hoban and Walsh. I'm going to go to that one and see all those prospects. That's going to be a lot of fun. Love that one. Great game here in Northeast Ohio. If anybody's going, let me know on Twitter or email me, Juckonbucks@gmail.com. Mika says, I talked about Sean Alston on the Buckeye Boys podcast. If we don't offer, we'll regret it, Chuck. Mika, I watched maybe 2 minutes of his film. I got to be honest. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it at all. Just doesn't look like somebody that in the old system, in 85 scholarship world, that I would really consider, because we're only taking 1 back. You know what I mean? And if we're only taking 1 or 2 max, he just doesn't do it for me. But in the new system, absolutely, I'm all for it, because I think that what they're going to do is they're not even going to end up maxing out those 105, which means any guy that's on the fringe like that. And I think for Coach Locke, I think he is kind of on the fringe for him. You're now going to take. Sean Alston ranked really, really high. And I was surprised after watching him when I was watching some of the other guys in that class. Some of the guys ranked quite a bit lower than him. But running back, that's kind of where I get down when watching those high school films. And generally, I'm usually pretty good at it. I usually nail those ones. Yeah, Dave, meet me at the game, man. I hate the college. Look, the last 2 Fridays, I've missed high school football games to watch the college football. And like that, I'm the guy that they're worried about. The ones that say it's going to hurt high school football. Like, it's me, and I feel guilty. Right? But this Friday, I'm going to the damn game. Braden says Wayne is terrible this year. I don't know why I thought they'd be pretty good. Mika says Sean Alston is dominant. He is in very, very low level football. Like that's my little brother trying to. That's like it looks like 8th graders trying to tackle him. No offense to that football, but like it's very hard to judge guys in lower level when you try to think how they would look against a higher level. But he's going to be a really good back, no doubt about it. But you've only got 1 or 2 shots. You know what I mean? Like when you look at an Isaiah West or a Bo Jackson compared to him, that's not a comparison to me. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. I'm definitely going to the game this weekend for sure. There's no second guessing. Already got tickets. I've already told friends I'll be there for sure. All right, guys. So tomorrow, and let me see what exactly, now that I'm not worrying about this microphone, what it was that Ron was talking about. Okay, so Q and Chris, well, Chris is on with me, and Ron and Q on their show have Pat on Fridays. And he was thinking about a panel style show with all of us. Hey, we'll see if everybody's up for it. We could do that. And then, when that's over, I could just stay on and continue to do more of the regular show if I got some other things I want to get to. No problem. We can do that, right, guys? Ooh, you get a look at Carter Lowe, Brad? That'll be exciting. What's up, Aunt? Carter Lowe, I would like to see. I would really like to see him. Yeah, man. Excited to see the Hoban boys again in action tomorrow. Most excited for Brayton Feaster. Man, oh man. You gotta school with the best cornerback in the country, an Ohio State linebacker, a top 100 offensive tackle, and the kid I'm most excited about is a guy who really doesn't even have a position yet in Brayton Feaster, who's playing running back as a sophomore, will not be a running back in college. He's just an absolute freak. He's going to be a 5-star. I'm 100% certain. And right now he's this number 62 ranked player in the class of 2027, but a wrestler. The physique on this kid is like nothing you've ever seen when he was 14. It's just wild. But anyway, enough about that. All right, guys, that's my show today. I appreciate you all so much for joining me. I'm sorry about the hiccup in the beginning of the show. I will not use that feature again unless I am 100% sure that it will not do me like that again. And I hope it didn't ruin the show. I didn't have any of my videos loaded, and that stunk. But, we did the best we could. Appreciate y'all so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Juckonbucks out.